people may expect to see some higher prices for items at the grocery store and at the pump.
He said that we're going to have tariffs, and in his own words, we're going to feel a little bit of pain.
The cost of groceries, gas, energy, and cars could rise.
New tariffs on several U.S. trade partners, how much you could pay and when.
Well, Sydney, nearly 30% of all imports to the United States come from Canada and Mexico. I spoke with a local expert who says people may expect to see some higher prices for items at the grocery store and at the pump. President Donald Trump signed an order that imposes a 10% tariff rate on all imports from China and 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada. The exception being a 10% rate on Canadian oil. The president says the tariffs aim to combat illegal immigration and the tide of fentanyl. He adds they are being imposed because the United States has a trade deficit with the three countries.
He has said that we're going to have tariffs, and in his own words, we're going to feel a little bit of pain.
But some consumers and economists are concerned that tariffs could raise prices of goods and services. Brian Ullman, financial advisor with the Ford Financial Group, says the cost of groceries, gas, energy, and cars could rise.
The reality is it's probably going to be, if these tariffs stay in place, going to be more expensive 6 months from now than they are today.
Ullman also says car dealerships may also be hit.
If they're not fully assembled in Mexico, parts are manufactured there and they're crossing the border back and forth. And so the car you want may not be available. The car you want may be more expensive than it was just a few weeks ago.
But Ullman says the bigger question is, how will the steep new tariffs affect the economy? And the tariffs are set to take effect on Tuesday. President Trump acknowledges that prices are going to rise, but that it is worth the trade-off in the administration's view.
All right, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Big Blue. As you guys know, this channel is supposed to provide more information on what's going on in the world from a biblical perspective, but also to see exactly what's going on and being wiser. For the Bible says that we must be calm and peaceful as a dove, but as wise as a snake. So in order to gain wisdom, you got to know exactly what's going on. So some of you may know, some of you may not know that currently the situation that's happening right now is that our president, our new president, Trump, has been making a whole bunch of changes, a lot more changes than I expected. I know a lot of YouTubers, especially the Republican YouTubers, are not probably going to speak about this because they may not see this as an issue too much. But from somebody that's come from a side that, used to understand exactly what it means to not have much money, from me individually, for myself, it makes things very interesting when you're looking at what's going on here. Now, most people probably won't even know what's happening until they go to the grocery store and they realize that eggs is now $10. Hopefully it doesn't get to that point, but we're going to have to see what happens because this is the current administration. So we're kind of here to see what's going on, interpret what's going on, and be aware of what's going on. We don't want to go to the grocery store, see that eggs are $10 and be like, why are eggs $10? And then we have no reason why. We want to know ahead of time exactly what's going on. So on top of all the other crazy stuff that Trump has been putting into executive orders and getting a whole bunch of changes that's happened, thus changes and those that's been blocked and whatnot has been happening in the world. This one, I think, is going to be very important for the whole world to really know exactly what's going on. This is the part where Trump is using his kind of business tactics to try and put America ahead. Now, you know that Trump's whole thing is that, he's trying to make America great again. That means that we're on top. If we're on top, that means we're supposed to look like we're on top. Everybody's coming to us. Everybody's looking at us. Everybody's requesting things from us, but we can't do that if everybody's already benefiting from us. And that's his whole thing. His thing with the other countries is that the other countries are benefiting from America severely. We're out here buying materials, resources out of network for some people that would know. And he doesn't like that because that just requires America to be dependent on the other countries. And there's not much power when it comes to dependency. Trump wants to have all the power. He wants America to be at the top, which I get absolutely fine. What's happening right now is essentially a game that he's playing. This is a risk game. that he's playing. And the thing is, it's not just happening with his business. Now, it's different when it comes to a business standpoint, because when you're a business, you're only really affecting the lives of people that are, but when you're a whole country, you're affecting the lives of the whole country. The whole country is on your back on this decision that you're making. So essentially what's happening with these tariffs is that Trump is imposing 10% tax tariffs on, I think, oils and some goods with some countries. So the countries that are being affected is China, Mexico, and Canada. These tariffs are essentially going to be switching things up. I heard different ideas of what tariffs are and what they impose. So for a quick lesson, a tariff is essentially a tax. It's like when you pay your taxes when you're buying something. It's like, let's say you buy a grocery store in Georgia and you buy an apple, and that apple has like 10 cents tax. Let's put it in that case. What happens is that because we're out of season for apples, the apple was imported from another country. So that apple essentially is from, let's say, Canada. Canada has the apple. The whatever grocery store buys the apple from Canada and then sells it at the grocery store. What the tariff does is that if Canada is going to be sending over that apple, then they had to pay said tariff. What happens to combat tariffs, to combat increased taxes? You increase your price on whatever that product is so that you don't get hit. The next person gets hit. So in that case, it will be the grocery store that would be getting hit. And thus the grocery store doesn't want to get hit because their whole thing is making business. So they increase the pricing of the good, essentially, thus making the apple $10 in a sense. And I laugh about this because, I mean, it's a very interesting situation. This is essentially a trade war. And I know a lot of left people are like, oh, they kept talking about Trump. There was no war under Trump's administration. And now look, we're in a trade war. I can't say which is better, an actual war versus a trade war. This is going to be affecting a lot of people. I mean, it's going to be affecting globally. So that's the thing that when it comes to tariffs, what that means. Now, the interesting part about that, although, yes, we do get hit with the bottom line at the end of the day as Americans. If it was so bad, why is it that other nations don't want this to happen? That's kind of the question that I had while I was watching these videos. I'm like, okay, so why is it that the why is it that the Prime Minister of Canada is so concerned and thus retaliating, and then also going to cause Mexico to retaliate, and then now China is going to try and put in a lawsuit? If this tariffs was so bad to the other, if it's just going to affect the American people, why is it that the other countries are concerned? Now, I think from my perspective and from me being in an econ class when I was in high school and really understanding economics, and thus, being a business owner, which I'm not a big time business owner, but just seeing how businesses run, these are the risks these are risks that you take when you're trying to gain control of a situation. You kind of force their hand so that they can kind of comply with whatever it is that you have. Of course, there's the tax agreement. I think I have that pulled up right here. So this is United States Trade Representative entered into the force July 2020. We substituted the North American Free Trade Agreement is a mutually beneficial win for North American workers, farmers, ranchers, and business, and the agreement creates more balanced reciprocal trade, supporting high-paying jobs for Americans and growing the North American economy. So a lot of the stuff that we get from these other nations are essentials like parts for automobiles, oils, minerals, metals, and stuff like that. So with these with these tariffs, essentially, the thing that's really giving me concern is if it's going to hit the Americans on the bottom line, again, why are the other nations so concerned? That was the thing that didn't make sense. The thing about tariffs that Trump mentioned before, which I think I'm starting to see why he's doing what he's doing, is that he wants everything to be homegrown. He wants he wants the Americans to get their oil from America. They want to make their parts in America. They want everything to be in America so that we're not dependent on these other countries. Yes, that's going to take a while to get completed in order for something to really work out. But I mean, at the end of the day, that's kind of what happens when you're putting in such a big plan. Like you're making big changes, especially changes like that. It's going to get worse before it gets better, essentially. So the idea that's happening here is that with these tariffs, to my understanding, if everybody starts switching from exporting or importing from other nations and doing things in office, well, then what does that mean for the other nations? They lose business. They lose business. They lose interest from America. And if America doesn't need you, then it's like, where are these other nations that's going to be able to pay for these resources that you have in order for you to gain a profit? And I think that's where he's trying to get to. He's trying to get to a point where we're at a better agreement. He wants to be at the top. Trump wants to be at the top in every aspect. He wants America to be at the top. He wants everybody to depend on America, not America depending on Canada for oils, Mexico for parts, and stuff like that. Now, is he taking everything into consideration? I don't think so. I'm not 100% sure. Because, I mean, clearly with this whole thing with the federal grant, how he was trying to cut that out, I don't think he definitely considered how much stuff is out there that is a necessity for the federal grants, hence child care centers and being able to pay for caps and stuff like that. Well, for some people to be paying for caps, amongst other things, in the school systems as well, in the education department. Let's put it like that. So this is really this is one of those cases where America is going to take a hit before it gets better. Now, the question is it going to get better? The idea, if my understanding is correct, is that Trump is waiting for Canada, China, and Mexico to fold and comply with whatever it is that he says that they're going to do. If it's just the tariffs, then essentially I don't see how that's going to. The only way that I could see that if the tariffs is the bottom line, there was no extra plan on top of that, then the only way I could see that is that the countries take on the tariffs themselves, not necessarily, trying to hide the tariff payments inside the trade and the goods, but actually take on the tariffs themselves, take that hit. So I actually have a video really quick from Clear Value Tax. Guys, great guy. He knows a lot about his stuff, and I go for him for a lot of information. He kind of breaks things down, and he shows a graph specifically on showing how much money we give to these other countries for the resources. And I think the numbers would drop drastically if Trump was able to get what he's wanting to for this. Let's check it out.
No, this is very straightforward, but Trump interprets it differently. I want to show you how he sees it.
A tariff is a tax on a foreign country. That's the way it is, whether you like it or not. A lot of people like to say, oh, it's a tax on us. No. It's a tax on a foreign country. It's a tax on a country that's ripping us off and stealing our jobs.
Okay, so you just saw that. And Trump believes that with tariffs, with tariffs, there's good and bad things, there's pros and cons, right? Trump believes that tariffs will provide a positive net effect for Americans and for the U.S. economy. So please take a look.
You're talking about 60% trade on that, 60% tariffs on that. You're talking, as you said, 100, 200% on things you don't really like. You're also talking about 10, 20% tariffs on the rest of the world. That is going to have a serious effect on the overall economy. And yes, you're going to find some people who will gain from individual tariffs. The overall effect could be massive in terms of the economy.
I agree it's going to have a massive effect, positive effect. It's going to be a positive, not a negative.
Okay, now I want to show you this. On November 25th, President Trump posted this on Truth Social. He said that on January 20th, he will sign all necessary documents to charge Mexico and Canada a 25% tariff. He said that it's going to remain in effect until drugs and all illegal aliens stop this invasion of our country. So January 20th arrived, and President Trump did not sign those documents to make these tariffs happen. But it's not like they were forgotten. What happened was it just got delayed. So I want to show you what happened on January 30th.
So we'll be announcing the tariffs on Canada and Mexico for a number of reasons. Number one is the people that have poured into our country so horribly and so much. Number two are the drugs, fentanyl, and everything else that have come into the country. And number three are the massive subsidies that we're giving to Canada and to Mexico in the form of deficits. And I'll be putting the tariff of 25% on Canada and separately 25% on Mexico. And we will really have to do that because we have very big deficits with those countries. Those tariffs may or may not rise with time.
Will oil be part of that, though? Because we get oil from Canada.
Oil is going to have nothing to do with it as far as I'm concerned. Oil has nothing to do with it.
Okay, so what you just saw took place on January 30th. And then Mexico and Canada both responded. So Mexico said that they're going to wait and see what happens, and with a cool mind, they're going to make decisions and be prepared. Now, I want to show you what Canada said on January 31st.
As President Trump stated yesterday, he is still committed to placing tariffs on Canada starting as early as tomorrow, possibly. Now, we don't know precisely what that could look like, but I do know two things. First, if the president does choose to implement any tariffs against Canada, we're ready with a response. A purposeful, forceful, but reasonable, immediate response. That if tariffs are implemented against Canada, we will respond. We won't relent until tariffs are removed, and of course, everything is on the table.
So again, that was January 31st. Essentially, Canada said that if the United States of America and President Trump goes through with the tariffs against Canada, then Canada is going to retaliate with tariffs of their own against the United States of America. And then the next day, on February 1st, Saturday, President Trump signed into place the tariffs against Mexico, Canada, and China. And then Trump wrote this on X. Today, I've implemented a 25% tariff on imports from Mexico and Canada and a 10% additional tariff on China. So President Trump was able to enact these tariffs by declaring a national emergency under the IEEPA to protect Americans from the border crossing of drugs and illegal aliens. Now, it's very important that you understand this. Within President Trump's orders, there's a retaliation clause. That means that if Canada, Mexico, or China, if they retaliate with tariffs of their own, then that means that the United States of America is just going to escalate the situation with even more tariffs. I mean, you have the retaliation clause, but then that same day, February 1st, Canada said that they're going to retaliate with their own tariffs. So please take a look.
Tonight, I am announcing Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods. This will include immediate tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods as of Tuesday, followed by further tariffs on $125 billion worth of American products in 21 days' time to allow Canadian companies and supply chains to seek to find alternatives. Like the American tariffs, our response will also be far-reaching and include everyday items such as American beer, wine, and bourbon, fruits and fruit juices, including orange juice, along with vegetables, perfume, clothing, and shoes. It'll include major consumer products like household appliances, furniture, and sports equipment, and materials like lumber and plastics, along with much, much more.
Okay, so that was Canada's response on February 1st, which was Saturday night. But also on Saturday night, Mexico says that they're going to be retaliating as well. The Mexican president said that they're going to implement tariff and non-tariff related measures to protect Mexico's interests. And also, China's Commerce Ministry said on Sunday, February 2nd, that they're going to file a lawsuit against the United States of America at the World Trade Organization. So they're saying that these tariffs are a serious violation of international trade rules.
All right, y'all. So this is the part that I was initially talking about before. So these are top 10 U.S. imports from Mexico. Again, 92 billion in cars and trucks, 77 in auto parts, and then everything else drops drastically. But even then, these are still in the billions. So household appliances, fruits, because when we're out of season, we need their fruits. And some of the fruits that just naturally doesn't grow here, industrial machines, medical supplies, telecom equipment, and such. So majority cars, trucks, auto parts. Now, this is from Canada. Oils and petroleum, which Trump said that these tariffs were not going to affect. But based off of the Canada's response, their retaliation, they are going to impose something on the oils. So I guess they kind of have that one up on us. This is 108 billion on oils and such. Cars and trucks, 42 billion. And then outside of that, everything else is pretty minimal compared to Mexico. So honestly, all in all, that's 1, 4, 14, 5. I would say this is probably like 160, 70 billion of imports that we buy from Canada. When it comes to Mexico, 917. Like this, I think honestly, we import way more from Mexico just from these two alone. that's already $160 billion from Mexico alone. So it's. And Trump had mentioned this before, previously when he was talking to Zelensky, the whole thing about him trying to make Canada the 51st state of America and whatnot. But I think from what he said, he had a conversation, Zelensky, did I say Zelensky? I didn't mean Zelensky, with Trudeau. I think Trump has said this with Trudeau. He had a conversation with him previously about, jesting about making Canada the 51st state of the U.S. But then I think he was actually being serious about that, bringing that to the forefront on the table with the prime minister. And he had a conversation with the prime minister, and essentially he was saying that, Canada benefits so much from America. Where would you guys be if it wasn't for America? And he said, and the prime minister said that he doesn't know. So I think he's really taking advantage of that and realizing that Canada is Canada because America is able to do America things. But Canada has been benefiting a lot from America, so they're going to have to pay that back. Now, again, that agreement, that Mexico-Canada-U.S. agreement that I was talking about earlier, that was in July 2020. That was under July 2020, the beginning of the Biden administration. I'm not 100% if this was something that was decided with the Biden administration or if there was something that was kind of decided beforehand that just carried over to the Biden administration. But clearly it seems like Trump is trying to get rid of that. So it's a very interesting situation. This is going to affect a lot of people. This is going to affect a lot of those in low incomes. But clearly, this is a risk that Trump seems like he's willing to take. And this is not me saying that this is a great idea. This is me saying that this is a plan that Trump has set aside. All I'm going to say is that I hope for the best and that people act accordingly, because this is what he's going to do. This is what he plans on doing. And unfortunately, as a businessman, these are decisions that are made from a business standpoint that initially first affect your employees. And as a president, this is the stuff that affects the country. So the interesting thing that the gentleman from the first video was saying was that you impose these taxes and the price of everything that goes up, that means less people are going to be buying stuff. But per my understanding, when it comes to inflation, the reason that the Federal Reserve interest rate keeps on increasing is because people keep buying stuff. So this may cause a decrease in the inflation. I'm not sure. I'm not 100%. I'm not no professional economist. I'm just, again, looking at things from my perspective with the information that I know. There's a lot of things that come into play with this. As far as the whole fentanyl and illegal migrants, I'm not sure how tariffs would affect that unless, companies are just buying less stuff from out of the country, which means that there's less cargo that's being shipped out, which means that there's less drugs being shipped out. Outside of that, I'm not sure how fentanyl and illegal immigrants coming over would be tied to the tariffs and preventing that from happening. But anyways, regardless, this is what's happening in the world. This is my perspective. This is what I think, the gears that's running in my head. It's going to be a very interesting situation indeed. And I say interesting because of my economic status right now. For a lot of people that are on lower incomes than me, this is not going to be interesting. This is probably going to be pretty bad if people don't bend to, if the other countries don't bend to Trump's will. Who knows? But we'll see how things continue on. And I'm going to be here and make sure that I'm keeping these tabs on these Republicans to see exactly what's going on and pinpoint everything negative that they do. Not saying that I'm out here trying to, switch up and be like, oh, well, I'm a left. No, that's not the case at all. I'm very understanding that there are good things and there are bad things that happen. And I also know that a lot of Republicans, and when they talk about certain things, talk about certain conversations that comes with the Republican Party, just like with the Democrats, they tend to not talk about the bad things. This is one of those situations where it's a good and a bad, but because of how drastic and how risky it is, it needs to be talked about. And the people need to know exactly what's going on. So y'all let me know in the comment section what y'all think. Am I completely wrong about this whole situation? Provide me with more information. Let's go ahead and be wise together and know exactly what's going on in the world. As always, y'all take it easy. Peace. God bless.